Welcome back to my channel, Act on Mental Health. My name is Sean Hardy, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor here in Indiana. I use acceptance and commitment therapy to help improve people's mental health. In today's video, we're going to be continuing where we left off, talking about RFT and the practical implications and its connection to ACT. RFT stands for Relational Frame Theory. And if you're new to RFT, it's the foundational science behind ACT, and something you'll likely hear about if you study ACT. So let's get started. In the previous video, we talked about relational responding and derived relational responding, how we use frames or cues to help us understand what someone is meaning. Now let's talk about the transformation of stimulus function. This means one thing can change or affect another thing because of their relationship. For example, I'm going to show a word on the screen. I don't know if you've ever seen this word or you know what this word is, but this word is bettering, which means lemon. Imagine biting into a bettering. This may cause you to taste something sour, even though a bettering was just a word a moment ago. The word's function changed because of its relationship with lemon. The transformation of stimulus function helps us understand how people react to things that they haven't directly experienced before. This is important in mental health, like dealing with anxiety or phobias. Sometimes people feel fear or avoid things that they never had a bad experience with. For instance, a child scared of spiders might hesitate to take a bath if you told them that spiders like to live in plug holes. Even though baths were never bad before, the idea can make them feel anxious when asked to take a bath. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is another example. If someone had a bad car accident and remembers the smell of gas, they may try to avoid gas stations because the smell might remind them of the trauma. Even if someone was at a family barbecue, the gas in the propane tank in the grill, it may cause them not want to eat because it reminds them of those memories and those feelings from the car accident. So even unrelated things can make you remember past events or feel the same way. You don't have to necessarily have a diagnosis of PTSD to experience this. My older brother, for example, he threw up after eating a banana as a child, and he no longer eats bananas. And you couldn't convince him to eat one today, unless you change the relationship. So instead of offering him a banana, you may have better luck making banana bread or banana pudding, and it might be something he enjoys, and it might transform the stimulus function. Now let's talk about how this connects with ACT. Often, there's a gap in lab discoveries in real-life use. Scientists in labs explore things just to learn, without thinking about how it can be used practically. Thankfully, RFT and ACT didn't just stay in the research world. Stephen Hayes, who's both a researcher and clinician, along with Kurt Strassel, Kelly Wilson, and others, took RFT and turned it into a practical therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. RFT and ACT have big implications for therapies that involve language. You can take a simple word like up, and as you examine it through relational frames, you can think of all sorts of memories, images, and feelings that are associated with it. You can think of times when you were up in a high place. You could think of the feelings of uneasiness in your stomach as you're kind of afraid of heights. You can think of the movie Up, and you start to replay some of those scenes. There's a lot that comes with just a simple word. So let's try this. I want you to read these words on the screen, and I want you to jot down what comes to mind next to them. And it could be seemingly random, but I want you just to kind of think of maybe some opposites, some comparisons. You could think of perspective, time. I want you to kind of use some of those relational frames and see what kind of associations you can make. Notice how different words pop up in your mind based on the context. Now, here's a crucial point. RFT shows that you can't fight negative thoughts with more words because of these relational networks that have been established. If you think of something like, I'm stupid, trying to counter it with, I'm smart, doesn't usually work. Why? Well, your mind connects them both, so that when you think I'm smart, I'm stupid can pop up too. It's like a two-way street because of the relational responding that we've learned. Once we learned A is equal to B, we also know that B is equal to A. And this goes for opposites like I'm stupid and I'm smart. This highlights one of the core problems that lurks behind mental health disorders, where we're using language to try to control experiences. ACT views control as the problem. People often struggle with trying to control or change their thoughts and feelings. But research shows that the more that you try to control them, the more that they dominate your life. This seems paradoxical. It doesn't seem like it could be quite true. How could you have more of something you don't want to have? But I don't want you just to take my word for it. I want you to experience it yourself. So try this quick test. For the next 10 seconds, I don't want you to think about chocolate cake, okay? So we're gonna do this for 10 seconds, and I don't want you to think about a delicious, satisfying chocolate cake. Are you ready? Go. All right, and time. Could you resist thinking about that chocolate cake? Well, most people, about 80%, end up thinking about it anyways. The remaining 20% think about something else. But here's the twist. How do you know you were successful? You succeeded because what you thought about wasn't a chocolate cake. And when you think about it, you're like, don't think about the chocolate cake. What are you thinking about? The chocolate cake. So the very act of trying not to think about it actually brings it to mind. This shows why trying to suppress certain thoughts doesn't really work. Sometimes words join together to form rules. Rules can be handy shortcuts, so you're not having to think about things over and over again. For example, you know when crossing the road to stop, look, and listen, or look both ways before crossing. But there's a downside. Rule-governed behavior isn't very flexible. It doesn't adapt well to changing situations. It tends to be less sensitive to what's happening in the room than with learned behavior that comes through operant conditioning, where actions followed by consequences of reward and punishment help you to learn how to adapt. This has been shown in experiments where two groups of participants played a game where they learned that pressing the button would occasionally make the light turn on, which they could exchange for money later on. Group 1 was given no instructions and proceeded to enjoy the game by pressing the button, and they learned through experience that occasionally the lights turned on, which after the game they were told they could exchange for money. Group 2 was given instructions before playing the game to press the button for money. Those who were told to press the button for money vigorously pressed the button, and they learned that the lights occasionally came on. The researchers were playing a game as well, changing the frequency needed to turn on the lights. So sometimes it would be 3, sometimes it would be 10. They observed that Group 1 adapted when the environments changed, pressing the button far less than Group 2, and in response to new learning. Group 2 was observed being less sensitive to changes in the environment, opting to follow the verbal rule, press the button for money. When their experience didn't match, they didn't change their behavior. In life, rules can take over and make you do things that don't align with your values. For instance, you might avoid giving a presentation because you think you're a bad public speaker. But deep down, you know that you have something to say, and you're pretty good about teaching others. ACT helps us with this. It doesn't try to fight language with more language. Instead, it teaches you to change your relationship with thoughts. It's about seeing thoughts as just words and not absolute truth, meaning they can transform and change as you learn from the environment. ACT calls this process diffusion. Through exercises that help you detach from your thoughts and accept them, you can learn to observe your thinking without feeling controlled by it. A thought is just a thought, and a verbal rule is just a set of words. You can decide whether or not to follow. These exercises, called diffusion exercises, change how you relate with your thoughts and their meaning. This leads to a transformation of stimulus function and leads to new learning. When your thoughts have less control of your actions, you can focus on what truly matters to you. For example, if you value being a loving partner, you can show love even when you feel tired. If you want to make a positive impact at work, you can act on that value instead of being held back by negative thoughts. In essence, you can live in alignment with your values rather than being dominated by anxious or unhelpful thoughts. Now, there's a lot more to cover with relational frame theory, and I plan to continue to upload videos from time to time on RFT. As we wrap up, though, if you're interested in learning more about the cognitive diffusion exercises, then I would suggest that you watch this video next. Now, I try to put videos out every week, so stay tuned for more content related to ACT, RFT, and mental health.